I'm in Chorlton Water Park today, just come for a little stroll to have a look at the snow and what the place looks like. It's a nice little place to come to and wander around in. I'll show you a bit of what it looks like. This is a little track which leads up into a sort of quieter part of Chorlton Water Park. This is where I'm going. So snow has finally arrived in Manchester, and it's about -1 degrees. I think parts of Britain are Arctic, and there's traffic problems. The meteorological office, the Met office as we call it, has given severe warning alerts, red alerts I understand, which is the most dangerous. I think some airports are closing, some flights are being cancelled. I haven't seen a great deal of the news concerning travel conditions, but I have seen the alerts, and on a newspaper website this morning, for example, they were running a story about alerts, and then ran a long list of links which will take you to airport advice and motorway advice, all that kind of thing. So yeah, it's been quite severe in some parts, although it's only just arrived. The snowy, icy conditions have only just arrived in Manchester. So here's the lake at Chorlton Water Park in the distance there. To show you this, I think it's gorse tree, this yellow gorse tree, which is actually in bloom. Gorse is a very hardy, what do you call it, a shrub? I don't know. But I don't know if it should be in bloom now. But here it is. Should that be in bloom now? I don't know. Nice to see though, against the snowy white terrain at the moment. I'm stepping backwards, so my camera is going to bob around somewhat. So it's rather nice to just have a wander around in and enjoy this crunchy squeak of your boots in the snow. I'm not a huge fan of snow. I know a lot of people are, for walking and being outdoors. I was a few years ago. And what I found was, well, it was the novelty factor, really. But what I found after a few years of that, in the Lake District mostly, is it's just very tiresome and tiring, because snow is just such hard work when you're walking in the fells. And photographically, which is always my sort of underlying interest. Just looking at the birds, because might be a kestrel. There's a couple of them around here. My underlying interest is always the photographic scenery, and snow of course transforms the mountains and the fells and the cities and everything, and it's very beautiful to photograph, and for a few years I did that quite a lot. As soon as snow arrived, and I have to watch this because there's a big puddle along here very often, and it will probably be iced over. Probably be. If my voice is not very clear, that's because your mouth and your jaw sort of freezes up, and it becomes quite difficult to speak when it's extremely cold, which is what happened on one occasion where I was walking in the Lake District in Arctic conditions. I was staying at a B&B, a bed and breakfast in Borrowdale, went up onto Maiden Moor, and because the conditions were so severe, I think the wind was much of the problem. It wasn't only cold, extremely cold and snowy, but the wind, and therefore the wind chill, was quite significant. And just wait for this wind to subside, because it just interferes with my voice over, and I decided it was too severe to sort of enjoy, particularly because you were just battling against it, you were just fighting against it, which is, well, it's fun for a while, but then it rapidly gets, I find, it's just a pain. It's not much fun after a while, because it's just such hard work. And I saw someone up there and thought, well, I'll take a quicker route back down. Because she'd come up a track which I knew was there, but which drops down into Grange in Borrowdale. I know the track's there, but I've never actually done it. I come up further down the valley, up from Derwentwater. There's a track which goes up to Maiden Moor. So I thought, well, the best thing to do is get down quickly, and the quickest way down is this little track which I'd never done before. The problem was I didn't know what the conditions of it were like, and I didn't have any crampons or an axe. So I shouted across to her, or tried to shout across to her, because my voice was not easy to use, and I couldn't actually communicate. I shouted as loud as I could. I think I'll just go as far as this and then back, because it's not the most scenic place beyond here, but it's quite nice over here. And in another direction, which I'll go to, and I'll also put one hand in my pocket and the other can hold the camera for a while. So I tried to shout to her, but she wasn't very far away. It was only a couple of 100 yards, but she couldn't hear me, and I couldn't hear her because the wind was so severe, really. And I had to gesticulate, get her attention. And what happens in circumstances like that is everyone knows, well, you kind of watch out for each other. And if someone attracts attention in that way, you immediately think, are they in trouble? Can I be of assistance? Do I need to be of assistance? In extreme circumstances, but it wasn't really that extreme, because it wasn't a particularly remote place either of us were in. But I got her attention, shouted. She knew I was shouting even though she couldn't hear what I was saying. And it transpired that it was quite icy, the path where she'd come up, and she was wearing crampons. So I decided, well, she's to come back the way I've just come, which is what I did. It was okay. It wasn't as quick as going down the path she'd come up, but it was the safest option. Safety always comes first. And I think it would probably have been quite unsafe to go down the way she'd come up because it was icy. She had crampons, I had none. So I'm just talking randomly about weather conditions, and the connection there was your voice and how your face freezes up. I'll show you a little bit more of the scenery. This stark monochrome scenery, which is quite nice. It's quite pretty. I've taken several photographs at this point before, and the thing to speak about, I think, is how it's not obviously interesting. Photography is like that sometimes, in certain lights in particular, and in certain places where you've got just a nice arrangement of shapes and contours and textures and colours and so on and so forth. That's photography. It's sometimes finding something very beautiful which you otherwise perhaps wouldn't notice. I think that's intrinsic to photography. In some respects, it's the heart of photography, or pictorial photography, landscape photography, not the documentary stuff and other forms. But landscape photography, that's the essence of it, really, the heart of it. I'll show you this nice view here. Speaking of which, I'll show you this nice view here. These nice shapes and colours. What caught my attention there is the frozen aspect of these little puddles on the track, and how that contrasts with the snow. And the stark trees. There's some birds up there, you can probably hear them. Seagulls, I think. So there's an important difference between what the eyes see and what the camera sees or records. Let's watch this because there's a big puddle area. It could be icy. It's a very important difference when you're learning photography, to understand that what your eye sees and what the camera will record are two different things. The first factor, what the eye sees, is it has a psychological component. In other words, it's related to what you're experiencing and what you are personally feeling at that point. Now that can be in a very dramatic and beautiful place, such as a mountaintop. You can be feeling, exhilarated, fantastic, happy, and really enjoying yourself. But if you just pick up a camera and snap, without actually thinking about it, it could record the moment in a satisfactory way, or it may not. It's random and it's arbitrary. I'm just going to cross over this fence structure. You might capture, as it were, the moment, or you might not. I'll show you the River Mersey in this winter afternoon. And the important difference which you have to understand there is how, well, what's the best way of describing this? It's almost scientific when you take a picture, by which I mean it consists of various geometric shapes, graphical arrangements, colours, textures, layers, sense of scale, sense of perspective. You've got a foreground, a middle ground and a background, all these sort of technical aspects which you can talk about. There's in regard to which you have to understand how to compose it all. And in terms of composition, people often talk about what's called the rule of thirds, which I think dates back to I think it was Leonardo da Vinci, or some classical artist, philosopher type person. I think it was da Vinci, maybe Michelangelo, I'm not sure. But everyone knows what the rule of thirds is, and it's a way of arranging a picture harmoniously and attractively, which works basically. And there's some people here, so I'm going to walk down. It's a little bit conspicuous. And there are these technical factors, such as the rule of thirds, and those other points I was referring to: textures, colours, shapes, graphical compositions, and so forth. And you have to. That's the language of photography. Whereas the experience of being on a mountain, even a fantastic mountain top, is not the same thing. So you have to understand the language of photography, and that's the key, really, to successful picture making. Because they're two different things: the psychological experience of being in a place, and how you're feeling, and thinking, "Oh yes, grab my camera. This is brilliant." But then you have to translate that through these aesthetic aspects of photography, which represent actually its language. So here's the River Mersey. There's a chap over there walking his dog. I'm sure the dog's enjoying this. He looks very happy.